Alright, here we go. Welcome to my introduction on how to get started with an online franchise with 32 other people. I noticed that there are no videos on YouTube that explain this for anybody new to it, so here I am. I'm Jay Dizzle. I have a community of leagues that run through Discord, and we have about 100 people that play on Madden, MLB, and we will soon be going on to NBA 2K also. So here we go. First step when you are invited to a franchise and you've spoken to a commissioner like myself is click franchise mode and you'll join the league. You will either have an invite sent to you, and you will do this by giving your PSN, and you can accept it here or decline it here by pressing this button and they will pop up. Or if they give you the information such as the league name and password, you'll go to search leagues and then you can search up the league, and then once you've searched the league name that they gave you, you can put in the password that they give you, and then you'll be entered into the league. So once you get in the league, I'm going to start out by giving a broad outlook on what you're going to do week to week, and then later on I'll explain some smaller things like rosters and certain players that are more valuable than others. And yeah, a lot of this is based on my opinion. I'm not the best Madden player. I'd say I'm probably a little bit above average, but I definitely know a lot of the ins and outs, and as a commissioner I know pretty much everything there is to know about a online league. So first thing is the things to do menu. This is where you'll see a whole lot of stuff. Um, for instance, training. This is where you will. This is a pretty decent part of progressing your players. This, along with just playing good with them in games and getting them good stats, that's going to be the best ways to upgrade your players. Each week, I've already done it for this week, but it will often pop up saying do your training. And what you're going to do is click the button, and I've already done it for this week, so it's not showing up. But you'll have the option to either play the practice for the week, or you can sim through it, and it will give your players some extra attribute boosts and XP points. And that resets every single week. Once you do play it one week, you will be able to choose the same one, such as I have golds for these two practices I've done, and you can set it to gold and then sim it, and you'll get the gold amount of XP every week. So you really only have to play the practice itself one week for like the entire franchise. Um, each practice targets a specific position of players. Like this run counters one, I'm fairly certain it focused on my quarterback and my O-line. So if I wanted it to focus and give extra XP points to my wide receivers and tight end, then I'd probably have to choose a different practice and go through that and get the gold or get whatever medal I want. And then same goes for defense. So that's that for practice. Another thing that will happen is things to do menu right here. You'll see these players ready to negotiate. This is a huge part of being in an online league. You need to play your cards right in free agency and re-sign very valuable players and let go players that aren't very valuable. I'm going to go into this menu right now. So as you can see here, James Conner is up for contract, and in my opinion, with his 86 speed and a running back, which in my opinion is probably the least valuable position in Madden, at least. At least for me, I can pretty much compete with any running back I get. So spending 30 million on a slow running back is not smart, especially when you're the Steelers. So I already declined his contract and told him that I am not interested in talking with him. Now, Bud Dupree, on the other hand, I wanted to sign him, but I did not give him the money that he was asking. So I had this in mind because I know I have the franchise tag, which if you don't know, that's essentially a 1-year contract that you can sign with the player even if they do not want to sign with you. You wait till the off season and you have one franchise tag and you sign them for a 1 year deal. The option will pop up. It will say sign to the franchise tag in the off season. And the contract is 1 year, and it is a lot of money. The contract that you're giving this player is a 1 year deal that is worth the average of the top 5 players at the position, I believe. So I am doing this with Bud Dupree this offseason. I tried to trade him at the deadline. Nobody was giving me what I was expecting. So I'm going to wait to the offseason. I will tag him. It'll be about 1 year, $20 million probably, which isn't super good, but I really want to keep him, and yeah. So I'll be waiting on that, and yeah. And Avery Williamson, I'm really deep at middle linebacker, so I already told him I wasn't interested. A couple of these other players I'm in the middle of negotiations with, like Tyson Alualu and a few of these other guys. And Joe Hayden, I told him I wasn't interested. 88 speed on a corner, and he's old. No, no. Villanueva and a few of these other guys I still need to talk to. But yeah, that is pretty much everything. Regarding contracts, like I said, it is a huge thing in this mode, and you need to be careful with who you pay and who you don't pay, as these are your players, and you need to be able to manage it correctly. A little bit later in the video, I'll go through my roster and kind of explain what positions I think deserve the money and blah blah blah. But yeah. Next up, another thing on the things to do menu is scouting players. Each season, the commissioner of your league will either put in a draft class that is created by somebody in the Madden community, and like I did, I put it in for our league, and we have Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, all the in real life players, and they can do this before every season, or technically it's in week 3 of every season that the commissioner can put in the draft class. And on the other hand, some commissioners may leave it as a Madden generated draft class where it's completely randomized players. There really isn't one when someone downloads a created class like this one with Trevor Lawrence. It's generally going to be a lot better than a Madden created class. So, like, pretty much all these players are pretty much the entire first round will be players that are over 70 overall, and some go all the way up to maybe even 80 overall. In a Madden creative class, it is going to be a lot more realistic in the sense that some players could be busts, some players could be really good. You could get a real gem in the 5th round, whereas in a downloaded class like this with Trevor Lawrence, you're probably not going to find anybody worth using in the 5th round. But yeah, unless you have like a wide receiver with like 96 speed that you find, then you can obviously focus on that. But that's gonna happen. The whole scouting players. That's what helps you draft every offseason. So that's also something you need to do every week, and make sure you scout your players. And then when it comes to playing your game, for my leagues, we run through Discord, a communication app, where all of our members can talk to each other and you can schedule your games. So every week, our leagues, we advance every 48 hours. So you do all this stuff in 48 hours, which is obviously not a lot. I'd say doing everything takes an hour. So pretty much an hour every 48 hours is what it takes between the game and doing all these other little things. But yeah, you'll communicate with your opponent, and this is the easiest thing to do. You just talk to your opponent, make sure you guys figure out a game time to go within the 48 hours, and then you play your game. And like I said, I played the Ravens this week, and I beat him. So I'm done. I've done everything I've been asked for this week, and I'm just waiting for the 48 hours to be up so we can advance. Next thing is this team page. This gives you all your different things that you need to know. So this tab right here is my team, my coach, the free agents, and then Trade Center. It's after week 8. We're later in the season, so obviously trades are locked because we're past the trade deadline. So I'll talk about that in another league so I can give some examples and how that works. But free agents should be pretty self-explanatory. Those are just the players that aren't signed, so you can go in and sign one if you think you need one. I don't need one right now. Alright, and then next up, this coach tab right here, really there isn't anything you need. There's not anything super important. I should point out this with your schemes. This is where you're going to put um, how you want your team to be ran and what playbooks you want to use. Playbooks are extremely vital in Madden. Extremely vital in Madden. Um, I have ran with this Las Vegas playbook for the last 2 years of Madden, so I pretty much know it by the back of my hand, and that helps you so much in Madden. The biggest advice I can give someone if they want to be good is choose one playbook. Some of the better ones are Las Vegas. The Chiefs playbook is good. There is an option to download playbooks. I'm not going to explain how that one works in this video, but it's pretty easy. You just go to the settings menu and you can download a playbook. But yeah, I highly recommend the John Gruden Las Vegas playbook because it is very good. And then defense, you can go with whatever. Really, in my opinion, the defense is all about scheme. Some defenses run a 3-4, some run a 4-3. If you don't know what that is, then I don't know why you're wanting to get in the league. But yeah, like Tomlin, he runs a 3-4 defense, and I like to run a 3-4 most of the time. So that's obviously the playbook that I choose. These don't matter as much. Obviously, you can change it up, and then I'll change it right there, and I give myself some more scheme fit. It doesn't really matter that much, other than I guess giving yourself some extra XP. All right, and then after that, really nothing else super important in the coaching tab, especially for beginners, other than maybe spend coach XP. Doesn't really matter that much, but you can go in there and depending on how long you've been in the league, you can see I can buy some stuff with my XP. I'll also buy some O-line boosts. There we go. And yeah. Alright. And that's it for the coach tab. Now this is major. This my team tab is super important. There's a lot of very, very important things that are super vital when you're joining a league and so many things you need to know. So this is the point in the video where you really need to pay attention, especially if you've never played in a league with other people before, or if you have never played in a league by yourself either. I definitely recommend you playing in a league by yourself. Just go through the motions before you join in a league with other people. But yeah, so first things first is the roster itself. The roster is all your players that you have. It's just the total list. You can sort by position and go through. My quarterback is Tyree Jackson. Um, like I said, I'll explain later in the video a lot of the sneaky, super good players in Madden, and Tyree Jackson is one of them. You can look at his throw power, 96 throw power. That is all you need to know. Ignore the 65 overall. Um, but in our leagues, we were allowed to put on one superstar for one player on our team, and I obviously chose Tyree Jackson because I wanted to progress him, and superstar ability gives you the fastest XP boosts. And another thing that our league specifically did was a contract erase. So I chose to erase Big Ben's contract and erase Big Ben with it. So he went into free agency and the contract was cleared for my team. Depending on what league you join, every league will likely have their own little bonuses that they give you when you join. Hopefully not like when you join, but if you're joining a brand new league, then pretty much everybody will get their own special little perks that the commissioner wants to give out to make the league a little bit more fun. And for us, we give one superstar and one contract erase. But yeah, so this is how you're going to sort through positions. My quarterback is Terry Jackson. My number one halfback is Kalen Balaj. He's another really slept-on Madden player that I like a lot. and I've already got him +1 speed just from getting playing well with him, and he got an XP boost, and he went up some overalls and speed boost he got. Um, and then there's my other running backs, and then you can just go through the entire roster, and you can see everybody that you have. If you have an extra player in a position that you will not use at all, then it would make sense to cut him. Like this Cassius Marsh guy, I will never use him. I'm not going to cut him right now because I just cut some other people. But if there was anybody on my team I would cut just to clear some roster space and maybe clear a little bit of contract, I would cut this guy. If you look right here, this player release savings and this penalty right here, these are some extremely major things that you should make sure you keep track of, especially with your team, as money, just like in real life NFL, in Madden, it is a major thing. They're not exactly the same. Madden does treat their stuff a little bit differently than the real life NFL does, but for the most part, it is pretty much the same. So TJ Watt, I'd obviously never release him as he's the franchise player, but if I were to release him, I would overall save myself $1 million, 1.73 million dollars. And if I cut him, um, I would lose 10.8 million. So overall, I would gain 1.73 million, but it's that just doing that would not make any sense. As cutting an amazing player and only getting $1.73 million, like it just makes no sense. And you have to keep in mind that this penalty that you get, and this penalty, let me explain. The penalty is something you need to look at every single player before you trade them. When you were in negotiations with someone wanting to trade your player, this isn't some stupid little thing where you can just trade anybody. It's just like in real life where people do cost money. So, if you were to trade or release TJ Watt, you would cost yourself $10.8 million and you'd only save technically 1.73. This penalty comes in the off season. So every off season is when the penalties come about. You will not really notice the penalties as soon as you cut a player. Here, let me get to someone that'll here, like Vince Williams. He's definitely a player that I would cut if it really made a lot of sense. But right now it doesn't make much sense. Um, I can wait until next season to cut him, as I just don't use him. I could cut him now, but it really wouldn't make a lot of sense because I'd be costing myself a lot of money in the off season, as the penalty comes about in the off season when you want to sign free agents. When you want to sign free agents, the penalty comes about, and that's when you're reminded that, oh crap, you traded or released all these players. So even though it says I have $50 million wide open for free agents, that is when the penalty comes about, and all the penalty that you amassed over the course of the year and years previous, that is when it comes into effect. So if I release Vince Williams right now and I release TJ Watt, that would be what 10 million in penalty for TJ Watt and 16 million in penalty for Vince Williams. So I will have technically opened up 5 million total between TJ Watt and Vince Williams. But it just doesn't really make much sense to cut them, as you can wait or keep them because they are extremely valuable players. Um, yeah, penalty is just a really tricky thing to explain. Um, here, I'm blabbering a bit. Another player. Um, I cut all the players with really bad penalties already, so it's kind of hard to find an example on the team. Let me see if I can find a different one with someone. Hold tight. Here we go. Jimmy Graham. This is a big example of why, because a lot of people like, oh, Jimmy Graham. I mean, what's the point of keeping him on the team? He's a slow tight end. He's old. You're not going to use him, especially with Cole Kmet. Um, so a lot of the inexperienced players would just cut Jimmy Graham and not even think twice about it. But then you see, if you look a little bit deeper, you'll see that there's this penalty there. Um, and especially like in a trade. So maybe the person you're trading with sees Jimmy Graham as just a little throw in, and you think, oh, I don't use Jimmy Graham. Let me just throw him in there. It doesn't matter. Um, but I'm here to tell you that it does matter. It'll cost you $8.5 million. Well, technically $8 million, but you get the point. So he is someone that his contract expires after the season, so it would make so much more sense just to keep him there, wait until the end of the season, let his contract expire, and it will cost you $0. If you traded him or cut him, you would lose yourself $8 million because of this penalty. So it would all look all normal right now. You'd see 500K, you'd see your cap space increase by 500K. But then in the off season, when you want to sign free agents, you'll notice that that penalty comes into effect and just chops $8 million off of your overall cap space. So if you go into the off season with $50 million and you got rid of Jimmy Graham previously, that $50 million will go down to $42 million. And you're not going to be too happy. And if you just keep doing that with a whole bunch of players and not even think it makes any sense, your $50 million will turn into $10 million that you can sign free agents. And that's just nothing. And it could easily just be avoided by you waiting and just waiting for their contract to run out. But yeah, so like I explained, the contracts are super confusing and there's so many things to explain. But yeah. And another thing you can do when you look at the players, you can click them and zoom in and check everything out. You can see certain things. I find this one to be important as you can go and look at their stats and more importantly look at their contract. Right now Tyree Jackson is expiring for me. I'm obviously going to re-sign him when I get the chance, so I'm not too worried about it. But a lot of the time, when a player is expiring, or in other words, in the last year of their deal, that is when you will find a lot of people trying to trade the player because they may not want to pay him. Like I referenced with Bud Dupree earlier, he's on the last year of his deal. I did not really want to pay him the full amount that he was asking for. So I told the league when I put him on the trade block in the Discord, I said, I'm either going to franchise tag him or I'm going to trade him. And nobody really gave me a trade that I liked, so I went ahead and um, just tried to bargain with Bud Dupree, and he didn't want it, so I'm just going to franchise tag him. Now, someone like Vince Williams, who I referenced earlier, that middle linebacker, his contract expires this offseason, so I do not care about signing him. He's just not very good. He's relatively slow. I like my linebackers to be kind of fast, if you can tell by the other guys. Um, so I'm just going to wait till the offseason for his contract to expire rather than hurting myself with this penalty. And I'll just be done with Vince Williams. And yeah, that'll be that. What else should I explain? I really nothing else in this menu matters that much. You can edit your player depending on, make sure before you even click this button, you understand what it means. As a commissioner, I have a lot more things I can do when I'm editing my player. I can go around and edit players across the league. But Tyree Jackson, this is where the commissioner can go in, and if they do give you the perks like dev boost, like a free superstar or a contract erase, this is where you'll go in and the commissioner can change the stuff to superstar right there, and you can go in and do all that, or you can change the contract and do all that. But as just a normal member, you can't really do anything when you edit your player. Like, you can't do anything, so yeah. The one thing you can do is change your player's position, but any well-run league will have a little page where you can request to change your player's position. So make sure you put it in there. Like in our leagues, there's a little section where you need to let everybody know and let the commissioners check before you change the player, because we don't want anybody putting DK Metcalf at tight end or doing something like that. Um, And yeah, that's a big thing there. The depth chart is where you actually put the players in order of how you want to use them. Like on the roster, you saw Taysom Hill was above Tyree Jackson. On the depth chart, this is the actual order of the players that play. Tyree Jackson is obviously ahead of Taysom Hill, and Kalen Balaj is ahead of everybody. James Conner, you saw, was number one in the roster, but that was just because he was the highest overall. I do not use him. But yeah, as you go through, you can edit your players. Not edit your players, you can put them in the order you want them and put them in the positions you want. Claypool, I like putting him as my number one receiver, which means he'll pretty much always be on the field, and he's going to line up on the left side of the field. Um, Number two receiver is going to line up on the right side of the field and will be in the second most, and your number three receiver will often be your slot guy, and yeah. Tight ends, all that. You probably know all these. And then as you go down further, you get some of the more specific positions. Kick returner, punt returner, third down running back. So this is usually the player. This is the running back that you want to be your quick, speedy guy. Third down back is usually a receiving back. Some examples: Chris Thompson, um, the Redskins. I'm forgetting his name. Uh, J.D. McKissick. A lot of the receiving backs you'll notice are at third string running back. The overalls you can pretty much ignore right here because they're a little bit weird. Um, but yeah, this is where you want to use your little speed back. Like putting James Conner in this spot would be very stupid, as he's slow and you really don't want him going around running routes on a third down. Next up is a power halfback. Now is when James Conner would be a little bit more beneficial. So on a power back, that's someone that's going to be in a lot of your power formations and like I form and all that stuff when you're trying to pound into the end zone or in certain plays where you require some more power. That's the running back that's going to be in here. Slot wide receiver, I mentioned earlier that your number three wide receiver would be your slot a lot of the time. You can also adjust it here by making sure that the specific receiver you want in the slot will be there. And I want Juju as my slot, so I put him there. Rushing left end and rushing right end are going to be your players that are more in for the pass rush plays and plays that they're mostly blitzing. So that's why I put my best edge rushers out there. Bud Dupree was hurt, so let me go put him in real quick. Boom. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, Bud Dupree was just hurt, so now he's back. Cam Hayward, all these guys, these are your rushing D tackles. Those are the guys you want rushing the passer, obviously. Sub linebacker. This is a very special position, to say the least. Your sub linebacker is going to be the linebacker that is in on pass coverage plays and plays where you have a lot of players when you're basically in pass coverage for the most part. When you're running nickel, when you're running dime coverages, that's going to be the linebacker that's in. Many leagues, like Money Moves, my league, we do not allow safeties at sub linebacker. Many leagues do allow this. As I mentioned, this player is going to be in during pass coverage and it helps to have a lot of speed. But in our leagues, we do not want safeties playing sub linebacker because it does mean that a safety would be playing middle linebacker a lot of the plays, and we find that to be very unfair, especially when people are using the middle linebacker. So we require everybody to keep a middle linebacker in at the sub linebacker spot. So that is why I like to use faster middle linebackers, as they can keep up in pass coverage better than um, someone like Vince Williams, who's got no speed, and it would never be smart to put him at slip linebacker. Then slot cornerback. This will be the player that is specifically in guarding the slot wide receiver. Practice squad doesn't really mean anything. Another position I should explain is cornerbacks. Um, this order matters. This is why the depth chart is extremely important. You want to make sure the order of your players are correct. Like with the wide receivers, I explained how the number one wide receiver lines up on the left, number two on the right. Cornerback wise, quarterback one will line up if you're playing the game. They will be on the right side. They will be covering wide receiver two. Cornerback one covers wide receiver two on the right side of the screen. Cornerback two covers the wide receiver one that is on the left side of the screen. So that is why I switched Minka to cornerback, obviously. Um, that is why you see, like, as a beginner, you might be confused why Michael Davis is ahead of Minka on the depth chart. Like, that would be weird. But that's because I want Minka guarding the number one receiver, which normally everybody would put the DeAndre Hopkins of the world, Julio Jones. So I want Minka on them, and I want Michael Davis guarding the number two wide receiver. And then Steven Nelson, he does have a higher overall than Davis, but if I look at the speed, I need the speed on the outside. That is one thing I'll explain right after this. Like, there's certain things you should be looking at for each position. But yeah, number two guards number one, and number one guards number two, and then number three guards the slot. And yeah, those are the little things you should know for the depth chart. Um, Injury report is how you're going to check injuries. That recent players that was showing up on the things to do, so you don't really have to worry about that. Salaries is just another page where you can look at the salaries and you can see how far the players go, so you can plan a little bit, see what you got. At the top of the screen, you will see all my penalties and how much I've amounted in penalties. I am super good with my salaries and keeping track with everything. So I really have no penalties to worry about. Like, those numbers are extremely low. But I might go to another team. See, this Texans team, he's got a little bit more, not really a big problem. But there might be a team with like a lot. Let me scroll through real quick, see if there's someone that's in trouble. See this Bills team, he's got a little bit in trouble. He must have cut somebody. So he's just gonna have 10 million knocked off of his cap space. Um, so in the off season, he might have $1 million in cap space, but he's gonna have negative money to sign for free agents. So he will not be able to sign free agents as we currently stand. Um, Here's another thing. Here's another example. Um, Broncos, 22 million in cap space. So in the off season, you'll be ready to sign free agents, and you'll be expecting 22 million. But when you open up the page to sign the free agents, you're going to have 4.5 million knocked off that number. So you're going to have 18 million, or 17 million technically. You're going to have 17 million actually available to give to the players. So yeah, that's where the penalties come through. And that is why it's so important to manage it, because if you have a little bit of cap space like the poor Bills dude, he's going to have negative space and will not be able to sign any free agents. So he's going to have to, if he does want to sign free agents, he's going to have to release some players and figure out what he's doing. But yeah, that is why salaries are a major thing. And I encourage you to work it even more and make a franchise yourself if you do want to work with salaries and get a better understanding. Now, as I'm wrapping up the video, if you're just looking to get the basics, you can go ahead and leave now. That pretty much covered everything you need to know, especially when you join a league for the first time. This is where you just check your members, and then you can see other stuff like the stats and transactions and stuff. That's not really super important stuff. But yeah, those are the basics when you first join a league. And now I'm going to go into a little bit more advanced stuff that I can recommend. One sec, sorry guys. Um, Alright, I'm going to go into a little bit more advanced. Look into the teams and players and why certain positions are more important than others, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, I'll go through now. I'll go to a different league where I can propose some trades. Here's our third league. This is our fantasy league. Like I said, I run a community of leagues, and this is our third league, a fantasy league, where the rosters are all fantasy drafted. Trading is open as it's only week 6. When you do want to propose trades, you will normally do it. You will always do it. You'll be communicating with your opponent through the Discord, or if you aren't in Money Moves, then you might be using a different app to communicate. But this is where you'll get an overall look, and you can offer people. If I want to offer Scherf, and I will offer for TJ Watt. Um, this is where it gets a little bit confusing, as right now it does not show penalties. And you always want to make sure you're looking at your penalties, as I've explained many times. So you need to press square on it, or X if you're on Xbox, and you need to go in and go to the thing I showed you earlier and look at the contract. And you can see all the things, and you can check all that out. A lot of the time, like I said, it will not show the penalty on the screen. So when you're looking at a player, you're going to need to go back into your roster and go look and see if your player has a massive penalty. So you're going to have to check both pages when you're offering trades, and you need to be messing your opponent. So you really need to check your players and make sure that they don't have any massive penalties before you go and offer them. So where I was just there. So right now, sure, I wouldn't kill me if I traded him, but seeing as how he's very valuable, it would probably have to be a really, really good trade for me to want to get rid of this money that tags along with him. But yeah. So yeah, those are some things with trading. That's just how you're gonna actually push through a trade in game. Alright, and now I will go through and give some of my more opinionated stuff on what positions I think are most valuable and what things you should be looking at. So this fantasy drafted team, I drafted myself, and I chose players at the positions that I like. I chose players that I like, and I drafted certain people with the knowledge and knowing what I would like, my preferences. So I made this team to fit exactly how I like to play. Um, the way I like to play, I like to have a little bit of a mobile quarterback. In our leagues, we do not allow people to just be running around, throwing playmakers, rolling out, doing whatever. Well, this is a sim league, so obviously nobody abuses it. But I do like having a mobile quarterback, so if I do get rushed, I can roll out a little bit, and I can actually do something rather than just being sacked. I like to always have a little bit of an option. So that's why you'll see in pretty much all my leagues, I have players with a little bit of movement. Um, Tony Pollard is just a guy I really like. I don't, other than his speed, nothing super special, as he's a little bit smaller than most running backs. But you look at the speed for the running backs. If it is a speed back, you want to look at the juke move. He has 88 juke move, and the spin move, change of direction. That stuff is important. Trucking, when you have a speed back like Pollard, not really that important. But when you have someone like James Conner, that is something you want to look at, and you know they don't have the speed, so you really want to be looking at the strength and stuff. But running backs are all about feel. I will not use any running back under 90 speed, just because they aren't going to be able to break away and do what I need them to do. But yeah, that's just my preference. I will not use a running back under 90 speed. And for any um, new player, I recommend you not doing it either. Now, wide receiver wise, it is nice to have speed in your wide receiver room. It's super important. So you'll see DD, lots of speed. Marquez, lots of speed. And then my third receiver, Duvernay, lots of speed. Um, some people might like more possession receivers. DeAndre Hopkins is a good example, even though he is really fast. Um, some people might like to use a receiver that is a little bit slower and can catch balls a little bit better. He can catch some jump balls, as my receivers will not really be able to catch jump balls, but I'm not really too worried about that. As in Madden, I'm sure you know it is hard to lob it up and do all that. My tight end, I like to have speed, but it's not super important. My tight end isn't a crazy important position for me. I don't really have any advice for that position. That's just based on feel and if you, what you like. Um, O-line wise, in this Madden, it's not as important as usual. Like last year, Madden 20, O-line was crazy important. Like you wanted to make sure you had such a good O-line. This year, it's not as important. You do want to have the most important O-line position, in my opinion, and really everybody else's opinion, is right tackle. Especially when you are a right-handed quarterback, as all quarterbacks in the NFL are, except for Tua. You want to have a good right tackle, which is different because in real life, you really want your best alignment to be your left tackle. But it's not real life, so you don't really have a blind side in Madden. You're going to be watching, your quarterback doesn't have a blind side. So you want to be on the you want to have your best player as the right tackle, as you're going to be rolling out to the right most of the time. You don't want your right tackle letting players slip by. Next most important is left tackle, and then the guards and center position don't really matter that much. But for me personally, I like to. I don't know why I didn't do it here, but I like to. If I have my best player at right tackle, I want to make my best guard on my left guard so I can help out my left guard a little bit. Um, but yeah. And then defensively, um, D line, I wouldn't say there's anything you really should be looking for besides strength and block shedding. Like I said, I like to run a 3-4, so I have the big boys up front, and then I have some fast edge rushers up here between Sweat and Barrett. They're my quick edge rushers that are on the edge. Um, Uh, that's why they're listed at rushing left end and rushing right end because they're my speed rushers. Um, just like how in the Steelers one, I have Dupree and T.J. Watt as my rushing right end and rushing left end, as those are my speed rushers. And then I have the big boys down here, and then my two middle linebackers, who I really like. They're very speedy. As I mentioned, the Steelers one, I really like my middle linebackers to be fast, so 87 speed, and what does Murray have? Pretty sure it's also 87. 88, even better. But yeah, those are things you should be looking for. So D line, especially if you're running a 3-4, strength and block shedding, that is major. Um, and then if you're running a 3-4, having the outside linebackers, you want them to be fast. You want to be sure you're setting them as your rushing left end and rushing right end. And then the middle linebackers, I like to be speedy and fast. Like even players like Dion Buchanan, like he's trash in real life, but in Madden he's got like 89 speed, so he's gonna be really useful in Madden. Um, Safeties, my strong safety. This is extremely personal opinion. A lot of people have it differently, but I like my strong safety to be a big hitter, be super fast, super strong. Coverage stats I do not care about. I want my strong safety to be basically another linebacker with a lot more speed, obviously. But yeah, so this Josh Jones guy, he's pretty in real life. He's pretty trash, but in men, super fast, crazy hit power. He can tackle. Coverage stats I don't really care about, cause sometimes I will be using him, and I just want him to be a big boy. Free safety, I that matters a little bit more coverage wise. So I chose Juan Thornhill. I drafted him. He's got some better coverage. Um, his speed and hit power is not as good as Josh Jones, but his coverage stats are much better. So free safety wise, it is smart to have someone better at coverage because there'll often be someone covering tight ends and running backs, and your strong safety will just be running around sometimes. And then corners is such a hard thing to explain as it is super important. I'm going to go into the depth chart for this. Um, so cornerbacks, you always want to make sure you have them matched up based on what you prefer. Um, so as I mentioned earlier, your number one corner is going to guard their number two receiver. So I have William Jackson guarding their number two receiver, and I have AJ Terrell covering. Ooh, I have AJ Terrell covering the number one receiver. Reason I have AJ Terrell covering the number one receiver is because in this league I put superstar on him. I put superstar on AJ Terrell, and behind quarterbacks, putting a superstar on the cornerback is probably the smartest thing you can do. Um, so yeah, putting corners in order of importance, I'd say position-wise, superstar-wise, it is most important to have superstar in your quarterback. If you already have a really good quarterback, put it on a corner. If you're pretty set in both of those positions, I'd say put it on your D tackle. If you have a D tackle like DeForest Buckner, unlike years past, it is massive to have a superstar or X factor on a D tackle or D lineman, as in so many cases, having that ability, they will blow up offensive linemen and tackle their running back in the backfield, especially on inside zones, as there are abilities that these D tackles get when they have superstar that literally just allows them to blow up offensive linemen, throw them out of the way, and tackle running backs for losses of 2, 3, 4, 5 yards. And it happens 50% of the time there's an inside zone running play. Like, it is ridiculous. So it helps so much. If you have a superstar or X Factor D tackle, it is so helpful. Behind corners and behind a quarterback, that is probably the most important position to have a superstar slash X Factor on. Um, for me, my skill positions, I could care less about having X Factors or superstars on them, so that's why I didn't choose to put my superstar on someone like Tony Pollard. I know that my running backs and my receivers are going to get touches, and it will be relatively easy to level them up and give them the dev boost that I need, as I will play very well with them, so I really don't need to worry about putting a superstar on them. Whereas my D tackle, you are never, ever, ever going to have the opportunity to get a dev task and be able to play with them and even get a chance to upgrade their dev trait. And even if you do get the chance, it is like impossible to actually follow through with it unless you're playing some super trash person. So, yeah, that is why I definitely think corners and D tackles are the most important behind quarterbacks to put your superstar on, as it is pretty much impossible to do anything dev trait wise to get them to a superstar. Whereas with a running back and a wide receiver, it'll be pretty easy, and if you do unlock a dev task, it's going to be pretty easy for you to just knock out of the way, and it'll be easy as it's 150 receiving yards to get a superstar for your wide receiver. It's hard, but it's not like getting two interceptions with a defensive back on one game. Like, it's just kind of ridiculous. But yeah, so that's why I think putting a superstar on a corner or a D tackle is super important. But yeah, that's gonna pretty much finish up what I got. I gotta play a game. I would like to advise speed running backs, speed wide receiver. It's always nice to have speed on the offense. Speed is the best thing in Madden, as every year. Cornerbacks also have speed. Speed is very important, if I haven't made that known. Having them be tall is also super important. Be on a cornerback, wide receiver, and running back doesn't really matter how tall or not, but as a cornerback, you really want them to be tall if you can help it. Um, Anything over 6 foot is going to be good. Um, players under 6 foot, it is common for them to get bullied, especially by bigger receivers. So whenever I use cornerbacks, I want to make sure they are 6 foot or over, and they have at least 91 speed. Um, because cornerback is such a super value position, as there are so many good wide receivers in this game, and speed kills. Everybody's gonna have speed demons. You want to make sure you can catch up, and you do not want to be bodied by the big receivers either. So, cornerback wise, 6 foot and over 91 speed. You pretty much always want to. There are exceptions like Adoree Jackson. He is small, but he's super fast, so you can get over it. Um, and he's a good player, 85 overall at least. Um, but yeah, those are just the things you really want to look for. Um, but yeah, I think I've pretty much gone over everything with my opinion wise and how you want to set up a roster. Um, but yeah, I appreciate you watching the video, and hopefully, I know I was rambling a bit for a lot of it. It's the first time I'm trying to make a video to help out a lot of the new guys. But I wish you the best of luck in your Madden endeavors, and hopefully you join our league. And I'd be happy to talk with anybody. If you want to comment or ask questions, I'll be sure to respond as fast as I can. This is Jay Dizzle, and I'm out.